Hello. I actually thought I'd have done more videos by this point in January, but I have this whole job as a professor, and it's been a really busy start to the semester. In fact, I just came back today from giving a talk at another university about some of my research. But I thought I kind of have time right now to fit in a quick video about a couple of things that came up in my earlier video about cognates. One of these is the, to many people, surprising fact that the English word cow is cognate with the Latin word bos, which also means cow, but doesn't really seem to look or sound very similar. The other fact is that English much is not cognate with the Spanish word mucho, even though they look and sound really similar and mean the same thing roughly. So I'll start with cow and bos. They are actually descendants of a Proto-Indo-European ancestor, which would have been pronounced something a bit more like gross. So what you have at the start of the word there is a kind of a gua sound, where you've got a g with lip rounding going with a gua. And if you take away the lip rounding, and bearing in mind the following vowel also has lip rounding, so o, you think of it as gross, go. Take off the S at the end, which the ending that got lost in English. You're actually then, you'll notice, maybe not quite as far away from cow as you might have expected. So the sound g and the sound k, as in cow, are both actually fairly closely related sounds. If you make the sounds repeatedly to yourself, g, 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 and k, 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 you might notice you're basically doing the same thing with your articulators, with your tongue and your mouth. The main difference between them is that g is a voice sound, which means that the vocal cords in your larynx come together during the production of that consonant. So you get this sort of vibration, and we call that voicing. You hear this a bit more easily with fritatives like s, an unvoiced sound, and z, a voiced sound. If you do this yourself, you can probably hear the vibration, hear the voicing of the sound. If you gently touch your larynx, you can go z, ah, make voice sounds like that, and you can feel the vibration, which if you make sounds like s, k, f, sh, you shouldn't feel very much vibration at all in your larynx. So really the difference between these two sounds is just a matter of how early the larynx engages in producing them. And it's quite common actually for voiceless sounds to become voice and voice sounds to become voiceless, depending on the context. So getting from gross, or gro being the root, to cow is not that huge a step. We're really talking about a voicing and a change in the vowel, and then ultimately the loss of the ending that we have that's happened in most words in English. To understand how you get from gross to bos in Latin, it might help to know a little bit about the kind of sounds involved. So g in gross and b in bos, these are called stops or plosives. And what happens there is that your mouth stops the air from passing through, and then there's a release. So if you think of g, you use your tongue to prevent the air from passing through, and then you're g, g, g. You're releasing the sound. B is the same, except you're using your lips to stop the sound, stop the air from passing through, and it's released. So what you have with the b in bos is what's called a bilabial stop, because it involves both your lips. And what you have in gross is with a g is what's called a velous stop, because your tongue is in contact with the velum, the soft palate. And with bos, you've retained, if you like, the stop nature of the g, and you've got the bilabiality of the w. So you've kind of, if you like, coalesced these two sounds into one stop. The interesting thing actually is that it looks as if bos was not originally the Latin form, based on what we know about the transition from Proto-Indo-European to Latin. we would have expected was. And it's not entirely clear why we don't have was being the Latin word for cow. One possibility is that actually it's borrowing from a very closely related language, possibly because Latin also had the word vos, meaning you, plural, which became ultimately a French vous, and the first part of Spanish vosotros, and so on. So how about much and mucho? Well, I guess the most interesting point is, how do we know that they're not related? Well, the reason we know that they're not related is that we are able to go back through the history of these words and look at how they've changed and what we would expect given those changes, and they don't take us back to the same place. So the English word much goes back to Old English mitchell or mitchell. Basically, you've lost the ending and the vowels changed a bit. And we know, based on how we know Proto-Indo-European changed in its history to become Germanic languages in the Germanic branch, we know that the word mitchell goes back actually to a form which is cognate with Greek mega. So this is where we get the word mega, in fact, the prefix mega in English. If you want to say, talk about Megalopolis or something like that, that's where that comes from, and it's cognate with much, ultimately. The Spanish word, on the other hand, goes back to Latin multus, and we know that the Latin multus, which means much, is not related to Greek mega, and is not related to English much. It goes back, in fact, to a Proto-Indo-European form, multus, which seems to mean something more like sort of crumbled, scattered, that sort of thing. And if you've crumbled something up and you scatter it, you have lots of little pieces. So that's the idea there. So these coincidences are surprising, but we should actually expect coincidences. There are thousands of languages in the world. Each language has thousands of words in them, constructed from a relatively small set of sounds. And because you're constructing all these different words from a small set of sounds, you're going to see the same combination of sounds occur lots of times, both within and between languages. So, we have homophones even within the same language. So it shouldn't be that surprising that occasionally these similar combinations of sounds are going to end up with similar meanings. That's really what we should expect by chance. One that always really surprises me concerns the word Gaul, the name of that historical territory roughly corresponding to modern France that you'll be familiar from if you've ever read Asterix or Caesar. And the word Gaul in English comes from the French word Gaul, and the Latin word for the territory was Gallia, and it makes perfect sense, right, that we should expect the French word Gaul to be descended from Latin Gallia, except it's not. The modern French descendant of Gallia that we would expect is Jailly, and that does in fact occur in some French place names. It seems, however, that Gaul is not related to Gallia. Rather, it's a version of a Germanic word, which occurs in lots of places in Europe, in different some modern forms. One of them being Gaul, another being Wales, or the word Welsh is related to it, as is the word Walloon, Welsh in Switzerland. And this is a term which we see popping up all over Europe, and is used to refer typically to speakers of Romance languages or Celtic languages, Welsh and Cornish in particular. So it actually seems to have been a Germanic word, ultimately borrowed most likely from the name of a Celtic tribal confederation, which they used to refer to Celts, Romano-Celts, and ultimately Romans. And when the Anglo-Saxons came to Britain, they used the term to refer to the Romans or Romano-Celts they encountered in Britain, ultimately the Welsh and Cornwall. And in Gaul, it came to be used by the Franks to refer to the Celtic people of that part of Europe. It doesn't, by the way, and you can watch another video I have up here of an interview with an archaeologist about this, it doesn't seem to mean foreigner, or to have ever really meant foreigner in a generic sense, as is often claimed. So there we have it. Etymology can be super surprising, especially when there are strange, unbelievable coincidences involved, but we should probably expect coincidences because that's how language works. Thank you.